BRUCAST is back, baby.
This BRUCAST episode is brought to you by the BRUCAST Store. Explore a store filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with BRUCAST. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Visit now brew-cast.com/store. Link below.
Back with the fire, can't you see the flames? From Deutschland steps comes the BRUCAST name. Voices like thunder breaking all the chains. Unleash the fury like a runaway train.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another BRUCAST episode. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast is recommended to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. BRUCAST also on Instagram, X, and TikTok, where I upload shorts with the highlights of the show. So follow now, BRUCAST on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Links in the description below.
Here we thrive, we survive!
Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another BRUCAST episode. If you haven't checked out yet, we just released this new earth-shattering event on YouTube. Yes, we did this huge event this past weekend. You need to check it out. It's already live on our YouTube channel. We announced 3 major things. So first of all, BRUCAST is now in 1080p. Yes, for the past 2 years or something, we're limited to 720, but now we're at 1080. We finally bought some new equipment, new computers. Here's the studio. The second announcement, you know what? I won't keep giving you all the announcements. Go check it out right now, the BRUCAST Earth-Shattering News event, and see for yourself. Well, I'm going to give you one more, is that we now have the BRUCAST app for iPhones. Yes, just go right now to the App Store, download the BRUCAST app. Stay tuned, and yeah, you're gonna receive all the latest news from BRUCAST, all the latest episodes directly on your phone or on your Apple Watch, like everything synchronized with the beautiful Apple ecosystem. But you need to download the app, so go now to the App Store, download the app. So I won't give you the last news. Go check it out, the news, the Earth-Shattering News event. It's awesome. And I think that's about it for the announcement. Subscribe to the channel. That's always good. All right. So our guest today is Deborah Heiser. Deborah Heiser is an applied development. Oh my God. let me start again. Deborah Heiser is an applied development. Oh my God, guys. I'm sorry. Developmental psychologist. She's gonna kill me. She's also a TEDx speaker and founder of the Mentor Project, specializing in aging, midlife, and mentorship. Through her research, writing, and global nonprofit work, she helps people embrace aging and unlock the power of mentoring across generations. All right, Deborah, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on today. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So sorry for stuttering at your introduction.
That's okay.
But you're an amazing guest. It's amazing. So let's start with the developmental. Now I say it correctly. Developmental psychologist. So I think most people have a broad idea what a psychologist is, right? But what would be a developmental psychologist?
So an applied developmental psychologist is looking at everything we can expect across the lifespan. Most people think of a psychologist as someone you go to see when you have a problem. I look at things that are going right in our lives as well. You know, like I could focus on the negative, but I focus on the positive. So all of the things that we do from birth on, learning to walk and talk and all of that, I also focus on the emotional milestones that we reach across the lifespan.
Wow, that's so interesting. So is there an appropriate age that it's recommended to start seeing a developmental psychologist, or it's for everyone?
You don't need to see a developmental psychologist. So a developmental psychologist is often interested in doing research to find out more about what we have going on. So developmental psychologists are the people who really do look at all of those things, the increments and the things. What do we expect? When should we learn to walk? When should we be talking? A developmental psychologist is somebody who might look at what are the potty train ages. So, when should we do that? Now, that's when we're young. So we've got a lot of that stuff that we already know. We already know what to expect when we hit adolescence and all of the life stage moments that we have up until adulthood. But then that drops off, and people don't look at what happens in midlife and older life. Most people just think you just hang out. And I look at all of the things that we should expect to be doing as we grow older. So you don't need to go and say, I need to make an appointment to talk to a developmental psychologist. However, I do, and others might as well, see people who are on that trajectory, but might just veer off a little bit. And then I help them get back on. So it isn't something that's pathology. It's not like depression or a diagnosable thing that I'd be working with someone in terms of a psychological pathology. I'm looking at making sure people are maintaining that path that is what they want to be on.
Right, interesting. So could you give us some examples to illustrate what kind of different paths could people take throughout life?
So sure, these are all things that we would I then better figure out what I want to do post school. Maybe that's college or university or graduate school or whatever that might be. I should have a profession in mind. I should work towards that. I should probably find a house to live in or an apartment, some kind of a dwelling to live in. Maybe I want a partner. Do I want children? How's my career going? I can go on and on, right? So these are all things that we just naturally sort of fall in line, and we say, these are the things that I have to do. Well, the other things that we really need to keep focus on is, well, what is beyond that? So most of us are forming our identity when we're younger and up until, we're in our 30s in some cases, and we're figuring out who we are. And that is, what do I want to identify with? Most people will put their identity on a card. I am a teacher, doctor, lawyer, it's whatever their title is. And we forget that we have other titles outside of that, although people will say, I'm a parent or something like that, and that's part of their identity. But we're much more than that. We just don't really think about those other things because we get hyper focused on other things that we're doing. So what happens is in midlife, we hit a stage where we're done checking those boxes. We are, at the point where we've already taken in a ton of information, and developmentally, we hit a stage where we want to give back, where we say, okay, my jar is full. I'm going to open the lid and let some of my expertise out. And that's where I say, who am I going to give that to? Who wants it? And how am I going to give it to them? Is it going to be through mentoring or volunteering or through philanthropy? And that's when we reassess ourselves and say, okay, now what is my identity? Who am I and how do I think of myself? And that's taking ourselves outside of our identity card and just the title of what we do, whatever that may be. And, that could be, I'm more than a parent. I am more than my title at my job. I am XYZ in the world. And that's where we start to feel like our footprint matters. Like we say to ourselves, okay, I know that the work I do or the things that I believe in, my culture, my values, my whatever, matter. So I know that I make an impact and my footprint is a little bit deeper because I've been able to give back to others or show my worth or value. So when a developmental psychologist like myself is looking at the lifespan, I'm looking at those parts of our life that we may be seeing that are expected, like walking or talking, but are happening in midlife and later on, so that, we can maximize on that so that we're doing it and being aware that we're doing it and look forward to it as well.
Whoa. Whoa. That's amazing. I didn't know that was a thing. I'm literally, I'm not even joking, mind blown. Sometimes I'm having guests here on the show like, wow, that's mind blowing. It's not, but this is, I never heard about this. That's interesting. I knew about the baby part, right? When they start walking, when they start talking, but not about those later stages in life. And we start giving at some point. One thing that I heard though, I know that old people, they at some point people start buying stuff because they just have a lot of stuff in their houses. They start giving stuff away from their house. So I know about that, but I have the impression, the gut feeling that when you say
nobody wants it. Like people are not clamoring to get their dishes and stuff like that, which is what people think. Oh, I'm going to leave this to the next generation. The next generation generally doesn't want it. So a lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, this is all I have to give are these things. But there's something much deeper. And I write about this, in the book that I wrote, and I talk about this all the time. We take for granted all the things that we have to give. For example, on holidays, I have an index card with my grandmother's handwritten recipes on it. And I make those recipes completely as she did it. And nobody thinks about that. But every time you come to my house, you are going to be eating the same things, smelling the same smells, that all of that culture gets passed down complete. And so that wasn't from her, that was from her mom. And so this has been passed down. Now, that is a huge thing to give to the next generation. That is a huge thing to give to others. The things that you do culturally matter. And we often think it has to be work related. Like, oh, if I don't have a title like doctor or a lawyer, I don't have an expertise to give to somebody. Yeah, you do. Our most powerful forms of mentorship or passing on the things that we do are things like religion. I mean, that didn't pop out of a box. You weren't born and somebody wasn't like, here's your religion, brand new. It's centuries. That's been passed down by, the older people in the generation in our families who pass it down generation after generation, whatever religion that is, whatever cultural things that you have, traditions that you have. If you go into anybody's house, they could be the same religion, but their traditions and cultures are going to be a little bit different. And that's what gets passed on. And we get to choose, what is it that I want to pass on and what are the things that I don't really care about? And it tends not to be the physical things that we can pass down, like furniture and silverware and things like that. It happens to be that we treasure and value those emotional things that people can give. And that does include expertise in terms of, it could be work, but you will never hear of somebody being like, oh, do you remember that 3,000-year-old, from 3,000 years ago accountant? But you will remember from stories from 3,000 years ago about something that happened in a story that was told that got passed down. So that had to do with, the values of the family or some kind of an interesting thing that somebody figured out or learned. So that's why it's so important for us to realize that by the time we get to midlife, we have been taking all this stuff in without even realizing it. We've just been filing it away. And we finally get to the stage where we can say, what out of all that stuff that's in me do I think is important? Because that's what I'm going to pass to somebody else. We don't pass the stuff that we didn't like or we don't care about, but the stuff we find most meaningful is what we give back. And it's the most powerful thing when a person talks about how they feel about knowing that they made a difference in somebody else's life, whether it's culture, meaning, value, work, whatever it is. They finally feel like all that work that I did when I was younger matters now. Like it finally came to fruition. They get to see it. And that makes them feel really amazing.
Wow. Would you say that this is something instinctively is something that we have in our instincts to do that after middle? Oh, okay, you're nodding.
Yeah, it isn't. Nobody has to tell us to do this. It's just like walking. You don't have to say, okay, now, baby, you should start walking now. Babies do it. But the same thing with a lot of our milestones. We're built to do these things. So we are built to want to give back because otherwise we don't matter. It's like we didn't exist. We're invisible. We feel irrelevant. We feel like we have no value. We have no worth. We aren't useful. Those are powerful things. So we are built to do this. Most people think you have to be sort of cajoled into giving back. Somebody has to give you a reward like money to do it. But in fact, all of these things are intrinsically motivated, meaning that no one has to pay us to do it. We want to. And if you offer us money to do it, it'll feel like a burden. So that's kind of how it is.
Wow. Is there like an average age that we start having this urge to do it? Like, I think we could also reframe the question as, is there a specific age for midlife?
Yes. So midlife starts at 40.
Oh,
By 50, you should start to really feel this kicking in. People started at 40. the little inkling. So if you probably heard the term midlife crisis, that is where a person is like, oh, I have like an itch, to do something. I'm hitting this stage. That's the first sort of, somebody called it a symptom. I guess that's how you could call it, a symptom of the midlife itch to make yourself relevant, right? So people sometimes won't quite know how to do that or navigate that. So they'll buy things. But that's just some people. The majority of people immediately start giving back. Doing a podcast is doing that. Doing something, because a podcaster is giving back knowledge and expertise to people. There's a sense of relevance. There's usefulness in that. A person might say, oh, I want to share my knowledge in a different way, do community work, get involved with, my religious institution, something else. It could be a million different things. But that's where people start to get the itch to do that. They start to do it, but they don't put it together. They're actually doing something that they're built to do. They just think, well, I just had the idea and it sprung into me. And so I'm doing this.
Wow, that's so interesting. But I need to ask you, because the thing is, let me rephrase my question. While you were talking, like, I couldn't stop thinking about different people in my life that I know that past middle age, like 60s, 70s, or people even younger than me, 10 years younger, 20 years younger. So, and I have the impression like this is like an average, like you said 40, but I know people that are like older than 40, they're not giving back to the community. They're still like enjoying themselves like there's no tomorrow. The same way I know people who are younger than me, they're involved in community work. They are like trying to, you know what I'm going with this? So,
Yep.
so I guess there are exceptions.
It's like, development is interesting. So a baby can start to walk or talk, at some level at 6 months or 9 months or 16 months. All are normal.
Oh.
So the same is that's why there's a range. So a person could be doing it much earlier, and that we do start to do this earlier if we are involved in civic engagement when we're younger. So if you're already civic minded, you see yourself as a person in the world. Like, so if you were young and, you were volunteering at a hospital or doing things when you were young, normally, like you work in a soup kitchen, around the year, or you're doing things that are not internally focused, then you're going to be more primed to do that earlier when you're older. You're already doing it. So the focus just shifts a little to, this is a piece of me that I'm giving back. This is my value that matters, and you can become more consciously aware of it. And that's when you start to feel better about it. So if you're in high school and it's part of your school, you may feel like, okay, I better do this. I need a grade, or I need this to graduate school, or whatever it is. And you do it. But it's kind of like exercising. You exercise that muscle and you start to do it later, and you do acknowledge it. Now, there are some who it takes them a long time. And I like to think, I call it the Ebenezer effect, like Ebenezer Scrooge. So he was a self-made guy. Lived in a mansion, had people taking care of all of his needs. He had all of his boxes checked, but he was miserable. And it wasn't until, if you've watched, any of the Scrooge movies, A Christmas Carol, read the book, any of that, that you see that it isn't until he gives back that he feels happy. That's literally how it works in real life. It's like this. And I've had the luxury of seeing that happen with somebody who was like that until he was 93. And then boom, he clicked into that stage. So there's some that take much longer and some that'll hit it earlier, but we should expect to hit that stage. If you don't by 50, that's when you should say, why am I not giving back? What is it that's holding me back from this? Just like if you weren't walking by, say, 16 months or something, you might say, is there something impeding this? And let's get you on track with doing what you're built to do.
Wow, it's beautiful. I'm going to share a story because, well, before I share this story, I want to say something. Every week when I do like this podcast, I always have like different people, different doctors. Like I keep learning stuff, and every week I have this this thing nagging on my mind, like, why don't we learn those things at school? Like, those are things that we should teach everyone, and I don't feel it is. It's so annoying. Why you think is that?
People don't talk about aging because they're afraid of it.
Oh.
So when I talk about this, there are not other developmental psychologists out there doing this in droves. I was the weirdo that was out talking about this and was like the dud at cocktail parties because, nobody wants to talk about aging. So when I used to go out, I would, if somebody heard that I was an aging specialist, they would like try to run away because that's like the most boring person you want to get stuck with at a cocktail party. So, and that's because people think of our aging lifespan as a steep incline, right? We get walk, talk, do all of these things. And then there's a slow, steady decline. And the end of that isn't where people want to be. It doesn't go back up. So our physical trajectory is scary. So most people don't talk about this because the end result is death. Now, if you are talking about the emotional trajectory of our development, though, it's very, very different. And that is where we start at birth, just like we do with our physical trajectory. And that line goes up and never goes down. You should expect to be happier when you get older. You should expect to feel fulfilled, gratified, that your life has meaning. All of these things that, when you have a little baby, you don't say, oh, I hope my little baby grows up and runs fast. We say, oh, I hope my little baby grows up and is happy. We actually follow that trajectory all the way through life. So they don't teach it in school because then you have to teach about, the physical trajectory and the emotional trajectory. And we still as adults are not comfortable about talking about that. I'm out there talking about it, but most people are not because it reminds them of death. And what I like to be able to talk about is all that good stuff in between. It's like the nice filling that is making us feel like this journey has meaning and value for us. But we're still trying to get there. I'm like one of the few people out there talking about that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. That's helpful. That's like, I feel like we should talk about those things. Like, I also had a guest the other day on the podcast. He was a filmmaker for the porn industry, and like every time that anyone approached him and asked what he did, like they would just distance themselves, like,
Yeah.
but it's a job, and like I learned a bunch of stuff. Like we all do sex, we all have sex. So I think like all subjects are worth talking about. It doesn't mean like you're part of the group, you're going to engage with those activities or whatever. Like now we're talking about aging. I'm not old, but this is interesting, but I think like I'm a little bit special. I like to talk about everything because I mean,
But we all strive to be old, right?
yeah.
So it's something that we all want. We just are like, oh, I don't want to think about it. I want it, but I want it in the abstract.
We all gonna be old. There's no escape, so better talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because I mean, when you don't talk about something, I think I heard this analogy when like about secrets. When you have a secret, like it's in the shadows, it's in the dark, and like mold and like mushroom, it just grows, grows, and grows. It's like only by shedding light to those subjects and talking about them that they become less scary.
It's true.
Yeah.
People become less scared when they realize that that journey that we have is actually pleasant. That, I am in my mid 50s. I do not care that I need reading glasses. Anybody younger than me is going to be able to outrun me, but I'm happier. I tell my students who are 20, you can run faster than me, but I'm happier than you. I will take where I am. And people feel that way when they get older. People think that your physical trajectory is matched and aligned with your emotional trajectory, and it's not. So, you could be somebody who has physical limitations, but you could be really happy, fulfilled, and content. And that's where people have a hard time thinking about that, or they think they have to really appear youthful in order to have great relationships and feel good about themselves. And that really doesn't all match up with how our emotions work.
Yeah, interesting. I just remember. I think I saw today on Instagram that George Clooney. I mean, this guy is handsome. Come on, he looks good, and he has like the gray hair. Like I think they call how they call those gray foxes. Is that is that's the term, right? And I think he dyed his hair black. I think this week or something. And his wife was like, "Looks like shit. What you're doing?" He was like, "I'm just trying to look youthful." No, like that's not who you are. It's not your. He looks off. Looks weird.
Yeah.
Just accept it, man.
We also are seeing, you're right about that, but we're also seeing that people are seen as more attractive even in older years. Whereas, if you were to ask somebody what is old, that will vary. Like I've heard from 30 on up to, 60 or 50 or whatever. And, from college age students. And the interesting thing is I've been able to see how they have portrayed, women also as being, sexy even in their 50s. So like Jennifer Lopez is seen as sexy. There's like Cameron Diaz. There are all of these women who are in roles and they're older and they're still seen as, sexy individuals, just like George Clooney has his gray hair and he's older and he's seen as sexy. So some of those stereotypes are changing, and they're changing for women who, had been saying, hey, why is it that men could be a gray fox, as you said, and women cannot be? But that is changing, and we're moving. So I'm starting to see that with regard to age, the actions are ahead of our words that we use. So we might use some derogatory or negative words about aging, but I'm seeing more people in politics, in front-facing organizations, in film, who are older and they are in positive positions, as opposed to in, it used to be that the older people, if you looked at like, say, old Disney movies or something, the older people were the people to be afraid of, things like that, the old wicked witch or something like that. That has changed. And so I think just some of our words need to catch up.
Yes. So you can say for sure certain that no matter your age, like your happiness is not correlated to it. It's independent of your age. So you can be 90, 100 years old and be extremely happy more than like someone who is 15.
Yes. And that's because think about when you're young. When you're 15 or 16 or 20 or 25, you're still saying, what is my future? There's anxiety with that. Who am I going to be? Am I going to succeed? Am I going to do it? And what is it that I'm going to do? Am I going to make the wrong decision? Am I going to get into the place that I want to get? Am I going to live where I want to live? Am I going to find the right partner? There's all this what if and this uncertainty because you haven't done it yet. By the time you hit midlife and you get older, you're like, I've done it. I don't care about keeping up with the Joneses. I'm cool with my own opinion. I know who I am. All of that stuff that is really making for, turbulence or anxiety when you're younger, that still has that hopefulness, attached to it, is all very neutral when you're older, and you just get really the feelings of gratitude, fulfillment, and those things that we're all craving and that we want.
I have a question. So I saw this quote a couple of days ago saying that 90%, don't quote me on that, guys, but about 90%, basically all your relationships before 30 will fail. Romantic relationships will fail. So it's good that you had them, they're out of the way, now you're 30, now you can quote unquote starting having like your real relationships, romantic, that will probably last. And would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know that statistic about dating and relationships. I do know that more people are holding off on getting married. So, whereas we saw a lot of people getting married and having children younger, that has been extended to later years. And so I think that people are more comfortable with finding who they are and then getting a partner. And that's probably part of the factor, that is involved in that.
Because how difficult, in your opinion, it is to maintain a long-lasting, stable, mature, romantic relationship if you don't know who you are?
That's so difficult.
It's
Because first of all, you have to know who you are, but then your partner should know who you are too, right? So we want to know our partner as well as ourselves. So yeah, again, we have a luxury now, which is that we can wait to start families and start to find partners. And that's a luxury that we have now. That's really, I think people are saying, I'm going to cash in on that luxury and wait a bit.
yeah, it is a luxury. So, Deborah, I just remember I wanted to share a story real quick. We were talking about giving it back, right? And how this is fulfilling. I had a guest on the podcast the other day. Her name is Braca. And it's her story, it's not mine. She said that actually it's a story that someone told her, and then it doesn't matter. So the story the story goes, there was this person in their flat, and they were depressed and miserable and just eating pizza and just drinking or whatever, just extremely unhappy. And turns out, like, a neighbor rang the door and asked for their help. They asked this person's help to move the couch or some type of furniture, something like that. And by then they had already ordered the pizza. They were anxiously waiting for that food. And they're like, okay, whatever, I'm coming. I'm going to help you move the couch. And then turns out this person went to the neighbor's flat, helped them move the couch, the furniture. They chit-chat a bit, and then they interacted. And then the pizza arrived, and the person noticed that they didn't even want the pizza. They didn't even want to drink anymore. And the takeaway from the story accordingly to Braca, was that this person had, first of all, a human connection, but secondly, and more importantly, is that they helped someone. They did something for someone else. Yeah. And this was so fulfilling, so rewarding, that their addictions, quote unquote, went away, just melted away. I was like, wow, that sounds beautiful. It's like it's a nice example with such like mundane thing. You just help the neighbor move the couch, right? But it cure your addiction, let's say, and lifted your depression. I think this connects a little bit with we're talking a little bit earlier, like giving something to someone else.
Giving is so powerful. Most people, when you look at the giving, you look at the person receiving the gift, and you only think of them as having the outcome or impact. But imagine yourself, and it's somebody's birthday, and you're presenting that person with a gift, and they open it up, and it's exactly what they've been wanting. And they say, oh my gosh, you got me what I wanted. How do you feel when you gave the gift? Do you think, oh, I'm out $50? No, you feel great. You feel like you're on top of the world. You just made a difference in somebody. They got what they wanted. So it really is the person who's the giver who gets the most, because you get to say, oh, look at how I changed that person's day. Look at that smile I put on that person's face. Wow, I got to change how they feel now. Wow, that's amazing. So if we're able to acknowledge all those times that we do that, we're doing it all the time. If you look to your left and look to your right, you probably helped somebody, but we just don't acknowledge it. And we don't acknowledge the power of the giver. We only acknowledge the power of the taker or the receiver. So that's why when I looked at mentorship, I looked at it from the perspective of the mentor, because we know the mentee's going to get that gift. And we know what happens with that, but no one talks about the mentor and what they're getting. And what we do know is that those who are connected, like we have to be connected. If you're giving a gift, there's somebody that you're giving it to. And that works with mentorship as well. So those connections are the things that make us live longer physical lives.
Really?
And they help us to live not just physically longer lives, but emotionally happier lives. There's a whole movement that came out of England called social prescribing that is trying to prescribe medically through the physicians that people see and people, providers, to get people more connected, because people don't have those connections, and that makes it so that they can engage more in that. People can give, they can receive, but the connections are what are the fuel for that.
That's so interesting. Guys, I found it, though. Let's take it out. So, what is social prescribing plan? It's an approach that connects people to activities, groups, and services in their community to meet the practical, social, and emotional needs that affect their health and well-being. Whoa, that's amazing.
So I believe, now I was talking with people in the United States at UJA, and they were talking about how they're doing this in the community and working to get this to happen. And I was like, people need to be prescribing mentorship, because this is a way that we can get people connected and they're able to give their expertise. Like you mentioned, the person who helped move the couch. What if a person is helping another learn their culture? What if a person is, you do not need more than that. What if you're able to get a person to provide some kind of an expertise through the podcasting that you're doing, giving out information in that way? However, we're connecting individuals to get that to happen, it will make mentorship happen, so that people can give back their knowledge, expertise, values, and all of that.
Deborah, I need to ask you how you got interested in, first of all, developmental psychology and all of this?
So I had no idea what I wanted to do in college, like none, zero, zilch, zip. I'm a first gen college, my parents didn't go to college. They were like, whatever, go, why don't you just marry somebody, kind of like that. That'll be much easier for all of us. And I decided to go to college, and I'm in the middle of college and sort of like, whatever, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And I went down to visit my grandmother, and she was like the fun grandma who, when I would go down there, I didn't have to take clothes. I could just wear hers and, just bring shoes. That was the kind of fun, cool grandma she was. And I went down once, and she wasn't the fun, cool grandma. She was grouchy. She was a little disheveled. She wasn't herself. Mm-hmm. So I said to the person that worked where she lived, in an independent living facility, what's wrong with grandma? And they said, don't worry, we're going to fix her. And I was like, you're going to fix grandma? Like, what do you mean? She's broken? And they said, well, she is taking a medication that is making her depressed. And it's she had COPD, a breathing issue. So she was taking a medication for that and was causing the depression. So they said, don't worry, when you come back, she's going to be better. And so when I came back the next time, she was better. So better that she had a boyfriend named Wilbur. What? So she was happier than she'd ever been. So I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a grandma fixer. And I am going to go into psychology. So I did that. There were no aging specialists at the time. It was 1990. And, so I was thinking I'm going to go out into this field, but there really wasn't a field at that time in this. So, I decided, okay, I'll finish college. I went to work in a psychiatric hospital for people with depression in their research. Then I went to graduate school, but there was no option to look at aging in terms of what I'm talking about. It just wasn't out there. They only had, research and things like that looked at all the things no one wants to have or get, like depression and frailty and end of life issues. So I went that route because that was what was there. And so I started out in the field as a researcher and was really excited. I thought, this is great. I'm looking at age and I'm making changes. And then I went to a dinner party and I was so excited to tell people, oh, I have this book on, end of life interventions. And, I was going to talk about all my depression research and, and I wondered why I was a, cocktail party doomsday person. But I went thinking this, and I get there and nobody was interested in what I had to say. And the guy across from me, in fact, said, wait a second, what are you doing? Are you just putting a Band-Aid on all the terrible things that we have to look forward to? Isn't there anything good that we have to look forward to in life? and I had nothing to tell him. So I said, uh-oh, I better find out for myself. So I was in my early 30s when I was, thinking I better pivot and look at something else, because I was like, I don't want all of this as my future. There has to be something good. And I went to the literature, and I went to the developmental psychology literature as well, and the theorists and Eric Erikson and everyone who had done research. It just wasn't making it out into the mass, media. It was all well researched, but nobody was talking about it. They were only talking about dementia and things like that. So I pivoted and started really researching what it was about the midlife stage of generativity and how that kicks us off into this amazing place emotionally that we should be looking forward to. Everything I was looking at problems, and I was just like everybody else, thinking that that's what age was. So as soon as I found out that we have all of this amazing stuff to look forward to, that we don't hit a stage where we're like, okay, I'm done, I'm just going to sit on the couch, on the porch, on a rocking chair and yell at kids that run across the lawn. I am going to expect that I should be writing, doing things that are interesting, finding new hobbies, having new outlooks on life, and that I'll be giving all the time, that my being on this earth is going to be so important that people will want my information and knowledge. So that shift led me to start the Mentor Project, and to do a lot of the writing that I do for Psychology Today and for my Substack and the book, The Mentorship Edge. It was that pivotal moment of that person who called me out at that dinner party that made me switch everything. And so I'm very thankful to that person. I don't remember that person's name. I will always remember the way I felt, though, at that dinner party.
Well, thank you, random person. You gave us, especially you, Deborah, a wonderful gift.
Yeah, it was a wonderful gift. But the main point of all of that is that this is still a really new field and a new area to be looking at. So, some people are coming in and they're saying, well, I'm in midlife, so I'm going to start to write and talk about midlife. Great. Everybody should be out there discussing everything. And I don't disparage anybody doing anything, but there's so much good research and so much out there that we have to look forward to that is based on really great theory, really great research. And we should be looking at our future with bright eyes.
Yeah, I hope so, and hopefully we are helping people to realize that. Because one thing is a fact. Here, at least on the Western culture, as you get old, the general thinking pattern or thinking process is just wither and die. We're gonna put you in how to say, old people's house. How it's called again? Retirement house. And that's it. That's your life, man. Go there and then die in peace.
You know what, though? People say, oh, I'm going to have to go to a retirement home. Do you know where the most STDs are? That isn't retirement homes. What? They are not just sitting around. So, people talk about, oh, no, I'm going to have to go to a retirement home. They are not just sitting around. They are having a good time.
That's wonderful. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, so where I was going with this is, I have a theory that, especially the younger generation, they don't care about the old people at all, right? And I think technology is not helping. It makes us so self-centered. It's all about ourselves, our instant dopamine hit, and nobody cares about them. And what I want to say is comparing to the East, like Japan and Asia, it's the other way around. They see the old as the wise. They take the old as those, the ancient as the information holders. That's who they go to learn about life and ask questions. We don't have this here in the West, I would say. If you're fortunate enough, you have a dad and a mom present in your life that are stable and kind of care about you, and then you might have someone like this. But most people, they don't, or they even maybe some parents don't have this notion that they are I don't know. What I want to say is like there's so many people who go to therapy, for example, to have this as a replacement, to have those wise old people as guiding them, because yeah, I don't know that I don't know where I'm going with this. Didn't make any of this made sense? I don't know.
Does make sense. Here's what I'll say to that. I think I have an optimistic view on this. First of all, I'm going to say, yeah, Eastern culture has always revered age. But we aren't as bad as we think in the West.
Oh.
And I'm going to say that for a reason. And I said this before, our language doesn't match with what we see out there. We see a lot of people who are old, who are in politics, who are running companies, who are leading, organizations or missions or whatever. And we are now seeing older people in film and television and media. So we see all this. We even see rock stars that were around before I was born, who are outperforming in their 80s, and filling up stadiums. This is something that we're seeing, right? So there has to be some value that we think about these people if we're electing them, if we're saying, yes, you are my leader in the company, if I'm going to pay money to get a ticket to see somebody in their 80s performing on stage. There is value there. We're just not saying it. We're not acknowledging it the right way. But the other thing is, we think of technology as the enemy, but it really isn't. Look at you. You're doing a podcast. Do you know how many people you're connecting around the world? It's not just in your neighborhood. You can make impact now everywhere. And older adults are now doing podcasts. They are getting on podcasts. They are doing all kinds of communication, not just in that way, but in other informal ways, using Zoom and other networking platforms that allow them to get in to the lives of other people. So in fact, I've seen an upswing in it. With regard to the Mentor Project, we were able to get into 7 countries. Just last year, we served 5 countries and brought $3 million of mentorship hours to students around the world for free because of the ability to do it online. So I've seen that we have a lot out there, but sometimes people don't know if those connections they have are meaningful or if they're not. And there's a lot out there, and people just need to be able to say, is this a meaningful connection? Am I giving out what I want? Am I getting what I need? And I think people it's like being let loose in a candy store. And so people are like, I want it all. I need it all. And they're putting stuff in their basket, but they're not sure what's there. And it's too exciting in some cases. And so I think that although we're doing a lot, we're not acknowledging it. We don't really know what we put in our basket yet.
Beautiful. Man, it was such a positive view. Thank you so much. That's why I love doing this show. So, Deborah, you mentioned very briefly the mentoring project. So you're the founder, right?
Yes, I'm one of the founders. Yeah.
So what is it specifically?
So it is an organization that it started because we found that these people who are real world changers were having a hard time finding mentees. And I thought, how could that possibly be? All we ever hear is that mentees are looking for mentors. Why are you having a hard time? But a lot of people are retiring. And then they're like, I can't go to a park and say, hey, kid, do you want a mentor? That's inappropriate. They have to have a way to connect. So we decided, let's see if we can get mentors into schools to, give away their expertise. So Bill Cheswick, who's one of the fathers of the network firewall, an internet security expert, said, I'm going to be retiring. I want to get into schools. So we started just with him and a couple of other really amazing people. And we saw that the kids loved it. And most importantly, the mentors loved it. It was like so much fun. And then people said, you know what? Nobody's going to want to do this other than you, like few weirdos. And so we were like, okay, that's fine. But then within 6 months, we had 60 mentors, then 80 mentors. And then by the end of the year, 100 mentors. So we had so many people saying, I want to give back. Can I do this? Nobody wants money. They don't want anything. They just want connections with people that they can give back to. So we started the Mentor Project, and crazily, we ended up also connecting the mentors with each other, just informally. We didn't have a plan with any of this, but we started to connect the mentors on Fridays. It's now called Fridays with Fred because Fred Klein runs it. And what we've seen is people have started companies from that. So we've seen lateral mentoring, mentors mentoring each other, co-authoring books, writing articles, starting companies, doing things with people they would have never met before. So they're exchanging information, expert to expert laterally. And that was an explosive thing. So that term I coined before starting the Mentor Project, but that we were able to see really is what gets people going, is that kind of mentorship as well. So the Mentor Project has been around for about 5 years. We are really dedicated to making sure that our mentors are able to mentor students globally. And I'm excited to say that it's still going. It's still exciting. We've been building it every year, growing a little larger every year.
Wow.
It really was proof. The Mentor Project literally was proof that those theories work, that we're built to want to give back, that we do it for intrinsic motivation. Nobody gets paid. So the Mentor Project started with all volunteers, all people who aren't getting paid to mentor, and from philanthropy from others. It really took all three arms of generativity, and it worked because we started with only $547 because that's how much we had to have to fill out the paperwork to form a company and a bank account. And we were able to work on that amount of money because we were simply using the theory of generativity to operate.
That's beautiful. My heart feels a little bit warmer right now. I'm not even joking. That's so interesting. I like talking to you right now. I have the impression that we as humans, like, I mean, I don't have this impression now. I know, but for a fact, that's part of our DNA. We're
Yeah.
meant to do this. That's part of who we are. But I need to I cannot deny that we also live in a capitalistic society, and I need to bring back a little bit about like the point that I meant earlier. Like, we are so selfish. There's so much selfishness in the world, and do you think like capitalism has a role in all of this, preventing us to be fully ourselves in that regard?
Yeah, I think
Yeah?
we can. We can be both. Why
both.
can I not be generative and be for myself?
Oh,
If you are only giving, your cup is going to be empty. And then who are you? And what are you? You are meant to, when we're young, some people call it selfish. You're not being selfish. You're trying to fill your cup. It's all about you. You need to know who you are. What are you good at? What do I like? All of these things. Be as selfish as you want if that's how you're describing it. I don't see it as selfish. I see it as personal growth. And by the time we hit midlife, that's when we have the desire to give that out. Now, if we give, and are never taking in for ourselves in other ways that bring us happiness, why should we not like things? Maybe a person likes shoes or something else, or they want to buy a house. Have that. You still need to serve yourself while you're serving others, right? So that balance is what gets us going. So being in a capitalist society does not mean that you are not a giving individual. It does not mean that you are not generative. In some cases, it means you're more. Like, I don't have the money to put my name on a building or to donate and have all kinds of philanthropic things happen, but some people can. And they had to use capitalism to get there. So it's not a dirty word. Money is not a dirty word in terms of being generative. It can be a tool. It can be a resource for giving. It can be something that is out there that we should not feel ashamed of. We should feel like, how can I be giving that will make the most impact? And that does not mean that we deplete all of our resources in doing so.
it's all about balance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that there should be a limit on how much an individual can own or have in their bank account?
No, I think look, I don't think much about that very often. I think if a person is feeling like they are having a meaningful contribution in the world in a way that makes the world a better place, that takes whatever their knowledge, values, and their culture and whatever wisdom they have out into the world. That may mean that they have a big bank account. Maybe they're running a company. Maybe they're doing something really big that requires innovation. I don't think of that as negative and that people should say, I should have X number of dollars in the bank account or I'm a bad person. I think that money is irrelevant. To me, money is completely irrelevant. Can you do what you want to do and that you like to do with what you have? Like, we started the Mentor Project with $547. We wanted to see, because everyone said, you need money. How do you monetize this? You better pay your mentors. You better be giving them something. No, money is irrelevant. That isn't it. It's intrinsically motivated. However, if somebody else is saying, what makes me happy is making money, go for it. Go make your money. Doesn't make you a bad person. Go do what you need to do. You're filling your cup how you need to fill it.
Beautiful, Deborah. I don't know what to say. That's incredible. Thank you so much. I don't have any more questions. That was really, really incredible. So, Deborah, where people can find you, right? Your website. I think you also wrote a book, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Yeah. Please check out the Mentorship Edge. It talks about all of this and gives real world examples of how people like astronauts have been saved in space from lateral mentors, and how we can engage in ways with people that we don't even realize is mentorship, but that makes an enormous impact on the world. So check out the book, The Mentorship Edge. You can get it anywhere you buy books. It's also available for people who like audio in the audiobook format. You can find me at mentorproject.org. I write for Psychology Today, and I also have a Substack. So you can find me in those places. And, please make sure that you look to your left and to your right and that you start mentoring and giving back.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Deborah. Do you have any final remarks, anything else that you'd like to say?
Just live a happy life.
Amazing. Live a happy life, everyone. Thank you so much, Deborah. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. So don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the Brewcast app right now on the App Store. See you next time, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rank the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast is recommended to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. Check out now the Brewcast Store, Explore Store, filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with Brewcast. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Buy now at brew-cast.com/store. Again, that's brew-cast.com/store. Link on the description below. Be a Brewcast model and get free stuff. We'd love to see how you and your loved ones enjoy Brewcast. Snap a picture of yourself, your family, your friends, or even your pets wearing Brewcast merch, or watching an episode of the show, and send it to us and become part of Brewcast. We will feature you and your pictures at the end of every episode, just like the ones you're seeing on the screen right now. You can upload your pictures at brew-cast.com/contact or tag us on social media. Alright, everyone, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye-bye.